Barrio Love Oldies.com. Órale.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Miss Crystal Marie from Barrio Love Oldies, and we're back here on the Barrio Love Oldies podcast with none other than Thomas Sanchez from the Loyalty Record Club. Welcome to our podcast. I'm super excited to have you on. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor, and I'm excited.
I want to go ahead and get started right away with the interview so we could get to know who you are, get a closer inside look on what you're all about. And before we begin, I just want to say, I know we kind of touched base earlier this week, but I want to say thank you so much for your continuous love and support. I know you're always like reposting our stuff, liking it. And if there's one person that I can always count on seeing, my notifications on my phone is going to say the Loyalty Record Club. So thank you so much to you for all your love and support.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Where are you from, born and raised?
This is always a fun question. So I was actually born in Colorado. When I was about 1 year old, we moved to Wisconsin, and then I lived in Wisconsin for about 10 years, and then moved out to Sacramento in the mid-90s.
Okay. And how old were you like when you moved to Sacramento?
I was 11 or 12.
How was that adjustment?
Definitely a culture shock. Obviously, I lived in a little town in Wisconsin up until that point. I don't know anything about Colorado. That's why I always think it's funny when people say like, oh, you're from wherever you were born. I was just like, I'm not from Colorado. I know, I hear it's a beautiful state, but I left at 1 and I don't know anything about it. Wisconsin lived in a very small town. And then, when I moved out here, I remember my first day of school, one of my teachers was just like, hey, he's not from around here. Can you guys kind of let him know, what he can and can't do? And I just remember all the black people were like, hey, don't wear this color. And then all the Mexicans were like, don't wear the opposite color. And I think like my first year out here, I wore all black.
You're like, keep it neutral. I don't know.
Yeah, because I was just like, oh man, I wasn't prepared for all this. And, it's so funny back then, Eazy-E was one of my favorite rappers growing up. And, him and NWA, they always wore all black. So I was just like, all right, I guess I'm going to do it like Eazy-E. And I think he had recently passed away when I had just moved out here anyway. So I was like, all right, wearing all black like I'm NWA for a year. But it definitely was, definitely a culture shock moving out here. So it wouldn't change it. I'm still in Sacramento and everything, and I love it out here. So.
What are some of the differences between where you kind of grew up at and then being in Sacramento? Like, what were some of the differences?
I know the street I lived on, it was a small neighborhood, but it was diverse. There were some, better off people. I lived on one of the rougher streets, definitely. So some of that stuff, I kind of seen before moving out here, but, definitely more diverse culturally wise for sure. And I love that, and that's one of the things I definitely love about this area is, I grew up with every nationality. Yeah. I tasted every kind of food, whether I liked it or didn't like it, but I at least had that chance, and meeting all kinds of different walks of life and whatnot. So. Yeah.
So moving to Sacramento and being in Sacramento, getting a new crowd of friends and all that stuff. What was your environment like at home? Like where you grew up, like inside of your home? What was the dynamics like in your home?
I would say I'm definitely blessed with 2 great parents that I grew up with. I want to say I moved out right before becoming a teenager. So, just kind of come home, eat, go out, hang out with friends until whatever time and come back home. But, even taking it back a little bit, before we moved out here, I know this is about music, so I'm going to bring up some music.
It's your interview.
I was actually just thinking about this, and I was actually just having this conversation earlier. I was thinking back, I was just like, kind of when we go out and spin, we're doing like live mixtapes, right? And I was just like, man, I've been doing mixtapes for a long time. And I was sitting there thinking back, I remember, before I was even 10 years old back, then we would take boom boxes and blank tapes were like gold back then. I don't know how old you are, but blank tapes were like gold. So, we'd sit there listening to the radio and boom, record. And I even remember what we would do then if we wanted to make them in a certain order. We'd take 2. I'm sure there was boom boxes with 2 cassette players in them.
There is, because I
don't
know.
Use them. Well, back then, I'm not sure when they came out. They probably had them. We just didn't have them. But we'd take like 2 boom boxes and like put them right next to each other because they would just record the sound, and that's how we would make tapes of, you know, in the order we wanted them. And I was sitting here thinking, I was like, man, I was doing that before I was even 10. You know, and it was just like, well, and it's crazy now because, you know, when somebody's like, hey, come spin for a half an hour or whatnot, kind of doing the same thing, you know, putting a bunch of songs in the same order. I was just like, or whatever order you want them to be. And I was just like, oh man.
Remember, did you ever like record music from the radio on those boom boxes?
Yep, no, that's exactly what I do. I'd record it from the radio, and then we would take two boom boxes and put them next to each other so we could make the songs go in the order.
Oh my God, yeah. I remember that. I used to do that a lot. I used to like, especially like for the oldies, I used to make my own oldie tapes, literally like just stuck to the radio to see, and then I would hate it because it's like I wouldn't catch it on time, and then it'd be like a few words, and I'm like, darn it. But they were gold for real.
Or you'd have to listen to you know, the DJ or whatever, like, all right, I don't want his words, or they'd come in before the song was over and start talking, and it's just like, no, you're supposed to stay quiet, let me finish recording. But and then I guess another thing, this was before I moved out here too, is I'm not sure exactly, but my parents put me in piano at a young age. I know I had an older cousin that played, and I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I was so young, but from what they tell me, when I was young, I was really good. You know, didn't get into that. You know, I let it go, and for the most part, and you know, it was just, you know, like you said, making new friends and everything else, and you know, the people I was hanging around, all of a sudden, you know, they're into lowriders and oldies and rap, and so the piano wasn't the coolest thing, so I just kind of let it go through most of my teens.
How did you even start playing piano? Like, was there somebody in your family that like encouraged you to do that? Or
I think it might have had something to do. I did have an older cousin that played it, and we had, you know, so my parents, you know, it was the same teacher, and like I was just saying, it seemed like they tell me I was really good, you know, because I stopped playing at like 10, 11 years old. So, but they tell me I was really good back then. And as a start, I'm going to talk about the piano a little bit more as we go, because I was just thinking of some stuff. But, you know, then when I moved out here, I got out of it, you know, unfortunately. Like I said, everybody I was hanging around, you know, we sat there at lunch break, you know, the friends I made were sitting here, you know, looking at lowrider magazines on our lunch break. And then as we got into high school, you know, it was all about dominoes and playing handball on our lunch break. You know, we were always we're going to get a lowrider one day and bump oldies cruising down, you know, our streets over here and everything too. But it was funny because, and then it got to the point, you know, CDs came out. So in high school, it's kind of the same thing. I was that kid borrowing everybody's CDs, but I would give them back to them right away. And I'd find, eventually my parents got one of those computers where you could burn CDs, and I just went through all my friends. I'd be like, all right, let me borrow these. I'd burn, like, remember, I don't know if you remember that either, burning CDs, and then I would take all the songs and somehow make my own little mixtapes off of that too, all through high school. And then I know I'm just talking about mixtapes right now. I guess we're just gonna keep going about this story, but I even remember too, you know, getting my license in high school, and my mom had an 88 Regal that I took over on, and obviously they didn't have CD players in it. So then I kind of went backwards a little bit and started making mixes on tapes again for me and my friends, you know. So when we're, you know, it's weekend, I'm like, Mom, let me borrow the car. And, you know, for the most part, my parents were pretty good about letting me borrow it on the weekends. And I was like, all right. So I was spending all my time during the week, like, all right, this is where we're going to bump this weekend, putting it on tapes because I can't play CDs in her car. So it's just crazy. I was thinking about how much I've actually done a lot of this stuff, you know, way before, you know, doing stuff live like I kind of do now here and there. But, you know, kind of interesting stuff just to kind of see the progression. I was trying to think about it too. I was just like, why did I get so much into music? And I was like, well, you know, I know a lot of people had black boxes and stuff growing up. Or we never even had that. We didn't have cable. So I'm thinking the radio was probably, and my dad's a music lover, so that probably had an influence. And then just not having, you know, I had a few TV shows, you know, I always had to tune into New York Undercover. I don't know if you ever watched that one, but that was my favorite.
Yeah.
And they always had the best musical groups on it too.
What's some of the music that you grew up hearing your dad listening to?
Oh, so my dad was all over the place a little bit. He's liable to put on Bob Seger. He's liable to put on Santana. He's liable to put on The Temptations. He's liable to put on George Clinton. So my dad's very open. I mean, he won't listen to like rap or heavy metal stuff like that, but otherwise he's very open to checking out his stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, I even took my parents and whatnot to see Jason Joshua earlier this year. So, and they had no idea who that was. And,
Wow. Okay.
they're
Okay.
like, "Oh, that was really good. That was really good." And I was just like, "Well, yeah," because he was out. My parents live in Reno, so he was out in Reno, and so I was like, "All right, got tickets ahead of time," and they had no idea. But my dad's very open to different musics, except for, as long as it's not too vulgar or too, I guess, just loud and crazy sounding. But yeah, I think the stuff I listed right there is a good representation of everything he would listen to. I even remember, man, I think I was like 18, and my dad this was when my parents obviously used to live here in Sacramento. They're like, "Let's go out to Reno." My dad was like, "Temptations are going to be on Reno. You want to go?" And I was like, "Let's go," and I just remember he would, because I was only 18, but he went to the margarita stand, and they were selling the yardas, like the yard ones.
Yeah.
Grabbed 2 of those before the show started, gave me one, so we're sitting in our seats before the show started. I was like, "Oh, this is nice." And I think this is, Otis Williams was there. I think Dennis Edwards was still with him. I forget the lineup at the time, but at the time it didn't even make a difference to me. It was just the Temptations. I didn't know no difference. But yeah, I mean, so he's always had a definitely musical influence on me as well. And obviously I had my own growing up, in the 90s, early 2000s, which, rap was obviously the big thing. There's a lot of alternative, back then too. I didn't get into that as much. I think I probably like it now more than I did back then.
But your mom, would your mom listen to music?
Yeah, she would. She's more like Journey and stuff like that. Or if not, I think she mostly listens to what my dad put. But I know she has her groups too. But my dad, they overlap somewhat.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
So how did you get into oldies? Like, how do you remember like the first time you heard an oldie? I know you probably grew up listening to it with your dad, but what do you remember, like what song it was that like really impacted you to say like, yeah, this is my niche right here, like this is what I like?
Geez, I can't say there was a certain song. I want to say it was just when I moved out here. It was more when I moved out here, hanging around, the people I was hanging around with, there's a lot of oldies. And at the time here in Sacramento, we had Tony Sandoval, which at the time I thought he was right here in Sacramento. Really, he was just broadcasting. He was out of the Bay. But he had a Sunday night show, and I think we all just started listening to that every Sunday. And, we were just, 12 years old, 13 years old, starting to listen. We probably didn't even, we ain't never had none of those feelings that they're singing about in the songs. But I also want to say back then, we listened to, also like more Bounce to the Ounce, whenever stuff, more of the funk stuff too.
Yeah.
And that was just the people, because we were like, all right, we all wanted to have lowriders and whatnot when we grew up. And that was the soundtrack to all that. So, that's why we were bumping all that music, preparing ourselves for when we had those cars and went to cruise in. But if not, we were still just at the house bumping it anyways. And like I said, at the time too, rap was still important in our lives too, just depending on the day, I guess, right?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you want to be gangster, sometimes you want to be low riding. I get it.
Well, this is the thing too. It's like if you look at the older people, they were bumping oldies. Like all the people from back in the day, like everybody, all the older homies or whatever you want to call them, they were bumping oldies. So then we'd be like, oh, that's his song. So I was like, let's check that song out. Or they would put them on it, like, listen to this one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't start getting into rap until probably like late teens, like probably like 18, 17. I think like in my early teens, I would listen to a lot of Chicano rap.
Yeah.
But I didn't really, I don't know why. I think I only would like the ones that would sample a lot of oldie beats.
Yeah.
So if I heard an oldie beat to it, and it's not just, I think it's like because I wasn't exposed to that kind of music like in my home, so that's why I wasn't really like turned on to it. But now as an adult, I like some rap.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I was like, I don't listen to it so much anymore, but if we're gonna talk about my teenage years, it was mostly rap and
it's just too much. Like the rap from nowadays is just like, especially in the mornings, bro. I don't know how people can like get up in the morning and like be hearing like craziness, like chaos. To me, that's chaos.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, let me wake up, let me put some meditation music on. Hold on, let me gather my thoughts. I ain't trying to pimp hoes and sell drugs at 7 a.m.
Right. Yeah.
Oh
So,
man, that's funny, but it's crazy. That's music. That's the beautiful. It's art. Music is art for sure.
yeah. And it definitely
Um,
changes throughout our lives too. Like we're both saying, like at certain parts of our lives we could listen to more. And I can still go back and listen to the old stuff. It's just, like you said, a lot of the new stuff, not
yeah,
my cup of tea so much anymore.
for
Um,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned you grew up listening to a Sunday night oldies show. Did they
Yep.
do dedications on the
Of
Sunday
course,
night? Did
of
you
course.
ever call and make a dedication on the
No,
Sunday night
I
oldies?
didn't. And like I said, I didn't even know. I thought they were broadcasting out of Sacramento. I didn't even find out until I was older that he's really out of the Bay Area. And
Wow.
I guess he
Yeah.
was just, like I know, there's Art Laveau and these different people, and they broadcast it all over the country, right? And
Yeah.
just whoever people wanted to tune into. But well, it depends what in your area which one they let come in. So that's the one we had on our local channel. So back then we didn't have all the apps and everything else where you can listen to a whole bunch of different stations.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the beauty of music right now, because I have a whole list of different stations I turn into now. But back then, we really just had a couple stations, and whatever they were playing, you had to go with it.
For sure. So how did you get into like vinyl? Like how did you start getting into collecting vinyl and all that?
Just kind of as I went, like, being a music lover, and then obviously I went through the phases, right? I guess I kind of did things backwards, right? Most people would go vinyl, cassette, CDs, digital, and I guess I did things my own way, because at the just what was popular at the time. It was cassettes when I was little, CDs more when I was a teenager, and then I went through a lot of phase too, where I guess I wasn't even listening to oldies that much. When I went to my last couple of years of college, and then I was working so much, and kind of got away from me. I'm sure I had music going on in the car, and who knows what I was listening to, just different stuff. But yeah, I think I just kind of started to get back into it. Get back into hey, I was like, why am I doing this? Like I always I was doing this because I wanted to have a nice car and bump oldies, and I think I just started to get back into cars and the music more somewhere along the way. I mean, there was no certain point. I went and bought a record player at some point, and I was like, all right, the oldies are the best. The best way to listen to oldies are just on the vinyl record. And so at first, I'm sure like a lot of people, it probably starts out buying a few records, and it was different back then too, because I could go buy records for and you could go to a record store and buy, I want to say Lisa, Smokey Robinson, classics for with no scratches on them. You can buy them for $1 or $2, right? And I'm so glad I did that when I did it. All the ones that I was buying back then, because you could just go into a record store and they had to have them nice. Nobody wanted scratched up records even back then, so it was just it's cheap to do. So just little by little, and then I want to say probably in the last 8 to 10 years, I definitely got into it a lot more. Getting different genres. I was like, all right, now I got a lot of oldies, and to start, getting some of the other stuff I grew up on, which wasn't part of the original plan, but it feels like it's an addiction. I'm sure for a lot of us, it's become an addiction, right? Because you're like, oh, once you hear it on vinyl, it's like, oh, it's hard to listen to it any other way. And I still will.
So
If we're in our car, we have to listen to songs, from YouTube or whatever platform. But it's like once you hear it, it's different, right? It feels different. It's, and I even know too, people ask me like, well, what's the difference? Why don't you just listen to them on YouTube? And I actually did have a friend come over and do that to me. So I actually did. I think I did it with Suavecito. And so I, just my system I have down in my living room. So, it's the same speakers, everything. So I played Suavecito off of my record, and then I played it off of YouTube, and he was like, all right, yeah, I can tell the difference. I hear the difference. Because, on the record, all the instruments, you hear them so much, I guess it's been described before, right? When you listen to a record, it's kind of like listening to it. Well, as long as they do it right off the analog tape, and I know a lot of them, they're just recording digitally, right? And so a lot of the new music does sound different. But if you look at the old school stuff, it's off of the analog tape, which is basically how it sounded when they were in the studio. So, if you're listening to it that way, that's how it sounded in the studio, where it hasn't gone through a computer and, digitalized or whatever they call it. And, basically it sounds, not live and not the same soulful feeling.
I always say this in any, like I've said it in many interviews. It's so different when you hear it on vinyl, because what I love about it is that you literally hear some of even like the producers in the background, like, all right, cut one, or like cut two, or ready. You hear those because they didn't have a computer to go back and edit. They didn't have all these digital formats where, not even digital formats, but now like there's programs where you can edit and do all this stuff. They didn't have that back then. So the raw format was pressed on these vinyl records.
A lot of people collect for different reasons, right? And I'm sure there's a million reasons out there, but, and I know I've had this discussion before too. It's like, well, to me, I think there's like three main kind of collectors, right? There's people like us, and I'm gonna throw the classic rock people in it because we listen to it because the feel and how authentic it is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna say there's the audiophiles, which they listen to it because you can get the best sound from the vinyl. Then you got the hipsters, which I don't know about them. I actually don't even really know any hipsters, but it seems like that's a big reason. One of those three reasons I think we all fall into. And obviously me and you, a lot of people that you do the oldies and whatnot, is because we like that authentic feel to it.
I know you started collecting vinyl, so you started buying records. Do you remember the first record that you bought when you went and started collecting?
I don't know the first one, but I want to say it was probably Santana, just because they're everywhere, and I was always big into Santana. If not, I would. When did I get, like, Malo? I know it'd be another one too, but I want to say maybe that was in my top 10, 15 first ones, but I want to say that was one of my first ones. I want to say Smokey Robinson Cruisin' was one of my first ones. Lisa, I know it's not oldies, but Freestyle. I love Freestyle too. I Wonder If I Take You Home, that album. I want to say that was one of my first ones. Man. I'm drawing a blank after that, but I think that gives you an idea a little bit of some of my first ones for sure.
So you started buying all these records. So there's a difference, right, between collecting and then pursuing like spinning. So at this point you were just buying records, but when did you get serious to say, hey, like, I don't want to just like hold these records for myself, for me to play, but I want to share them? How did you get to that point? Because I know you are also part of the Loyalty Record Club.
Yeah.
Did that happen very early on, you collecting, or did it happen way later?
Yeah, that's way later. That's only been these last 2-3 years. So,
okay.
So I guess I didn't even really have social media up until probably, way after everybody else had it. I was one of the last ones to get it. If you look at my personal page, it's not much going on. But I would follow everybody else, right? And I'd see everybody else posting records, and then it kind of made me like, oh, I should post some of my records too, and whatnot. So that kind of got me, into sharing a little bit. And then I used to go around. So there's various people in the Sacramento, even out to the Bay Area. I've gone to everybody that was spinning records. I used to go out to like every show I could, and just listen to the new music or find out about new songs. And I was always dragging my friends or whoever was around to them too, right? Like, oh, let's go check this out. Let's go check this out. And then my first time actually spinning was in where you used to live in Woodland, Thirsty Goat. I don't know if you know of Hella Groove. And I'm not sure what exactly the original conversation was, but I ended up, being a guest spinner with them. This was, it was before the pandemic. So maybe 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. I want to say, yeah. And then after the pandemic hit, so everything kind of slowed down. I mean, people, I think, still posting records and whatnot, but obviously there wasn't the shows. And that's what's kind of good about these apps. I've actually, you can still kind of listen to, what people are spinning and whatnot. But that was my first time. And I really didn't do it again for a while. So like I said, 2-3 years ago, we started the club, and really the whole reason we were even doing that, we're going to do it, we were just sitting, we had no big dream, not, nothing, no grandiose dreams, right? But the idea was, like do something in our little area, a place where people can go and listen to oldies on Sunday, because there's nothing around our little section. And So we're like, all right, let's just, we've seen all these other groups around Sacramento doing it. So I was like, hey, we'll just do our own little group, do it in our area. We came out with the idea, one of us, created the Instagram page and whatnot, but we didn't really go nowhere fast, right? And then this was back, the Holistics were a big group here, and I know they've all kind of branched off now. Casper used to be one of them. And so I would go to theirs. They would have one at a taqueria on the other side of town. And so we used to hit that up, and I got to talking with Casper. And he's like, yeah, let's do something sometime, da-da-da-da-da. And I was just like, oh, yeah, for sure. And then, so our first time spinning as a group, so this will be my second time spinning, was at, it's called the Walnut Room, which is it'd be like a dive bar, but it's one of the poppin' dive bars on the other side of town. But people from all over Sacramento go there. It's pretty well known in this area, especially if you like oldies and whatnot. And he asked us, and I was just like, well, we gotta practice and we gotta get ready. It was only a half an hour, right? Back then, a half an hour made me nervous. But he really he was very supportive. This is where really our relationship was starting. He was super supportive with us, and we went and did it. Everybody told us we did a good job. It felt good. And then, little by little, he's like, come on the radio. And so then, then we're spinning on the radio. I think I did that a few times with him now. And it's just kind of going from there. And like I said, originally, we were just trying to spin oldies on Sundays, for our neighborhood. And I don't know, how well do you remember Sacramento?
I remember it pretty well.
Do you know where Watt Avenue is?
Yeah.
All right. So our area, like if you're north of Watt Avenue, north of 80.
Okay.
And so I was going through there. After that, we built some confidence. I was like, all right, I got to get through. I was going through, trying to go through all like the restaurants and bars and whatnot there. Nobody wanted to have us there on Sundays. I was just like, man, I did get a little discouraged there. I was just like, well, this must not be meant to be. Because I'm sitting there like, how is it? These are places I would go. You could say I got a little hurt there for a second.
You're like, I'm not going to eat here ever.
Yeah, exactly. These are places I was eating at a regular basis. And I was just like, we're not even trying to charge you because, we're rookies. And I was like, we're not even trying to charge. Like, you're going to get a lot of business doing this. And then, like I said, I was sitting there. I was just like, you know what? I'm not even going to go eat at none of these places. None of them are showing us love back. All the money I spent, and I went through, all the decent sized places down Watt Avenue. And so I was just like, all right. And so if you remember Sacramento, 80 kind of curves through Sacramento. So, if you go south, you'll hit 80, but also if you take Elkhorn East, you'll hit 80. So, I was like, hey, let's go to the neighborhood over and, we'll just chill there, get a bite or whatnot. So with no intentions of doing anything, I was just basically protesting, my places. And so we went over there and sitting at the bar. I wasn't even drinking, but, the bartender happened to be a co-owner. And so we just started chatting. And it was so weird. He's like, I love that idea. And I was just like, oh, all right. So then we hit it off right away. So that's Our Vida out in Citrus Heights. If anybody in the Citrus Heights area, go check them out. And they have great food and great service. So I got to plug them. But so that's when we started spinning more on a regular basis. He said, as soon as football season's over, I was like, all right, because I guess they get a good crowd in the bar area for football. So as soon as the weekend after the Super Bowl was our first actual show as a club. And then we did one a week through, now that football season's on, we're not doing them, but still getting other things to do. But yeah, so those are all our, we did, I believe it was 6 shows, in the off season of football. That's just Sunday oldies, people can come out and just listen to them on vinyl. And so that's, wraps up until this year. And, I've done we do a few other shows and whatnot, but that's really how me spinning in public has gone.
Okay, so I have a question.
All right.
I want to backtrack.
Yep.
What was that experience like the first time that you went to go spin at Thirsty Goat? Because at this point you were just collecting records, and then now you're actually spinning. Tell me what the heck was going through your mind. What were your emotions like? Because I would have been a nervous wreck.
I did have a couple beers before I went up. But you know what I noticed too, and I actually did this in college, is when you have to go up in public, right? They say that's one of people's biggest fears. And I remember I was an accounting major, and there's a little accounting club. And I was just like, you know what? I think some of the worst part is, like, nobody wants to talk about themselves. Which, if you would have asked me to do this podcast a couple years ago, I'd probably been like, I ain't gonna sit there and talk to you about my life for an hour or however long this goes, right? But you know, I was part of the accounting club, and I became a board member, and it was the one that had to go and talk in front of everybody, and actually did help me out a lot, because I was just like, I'm not being timed, I'm not talking about myself, I'm introducing guest speakers, I'm doing announcements. And, you know, some of those functions had over 100 people at them. So I'm like, oh, now, you know, I've volunteered, I have to go up there, you know, with over 100 people there. And but it really helped me, you know, along the way. And then even in my career, I've had to do trainings that are day longs. So I've kind of gotten a lot more comfortable going up in front of people. Now, if I had to go up in front of 100 people and talk about myself, that might still be a no-go. But if you're just talking about a certain subject or something else, it's like, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. But like I said, going back to that first one, you know, I had never used a mixer, nothing like that before. You know, like I said, I would show up to all these functions. I didn't realize how much work it was. It's a lot more work than what people probably realize. And, you know, I was never one to really go up and talk to people, but you know, you see other people now. I get why people are like, hey, just leave them alone while they're doing that thing. You know, like as soon as a song's done, you got to take that off, put it back in the sleeve, put it away, pick out another one, cue it up. So you don't get to enjoy the music too much. You know, not as much as you would like to, but it's still fun doing it. But you know, it's a lot more work. And you know, now that I've done it, you know, as much as I've done it, like it's easy. At least with oldies is easy. When you do funk and you're trying to mix stuff, or you know, that's definitely even a lot more work. But you know, the dude Sonny from Hello Groove, he was the one that actually showed me how to use the mixer for the first time, and he was super cool. He was super patient with me, so that was good. I mean, the only other thing I think I kind of remember about it was I took a bunch of like soul, because I was thinking it was Sunday. I was like, I'm just gonna play some Sunday oldies, and I had been there a bunch of times already. But they're like, let's play more upbeat music tonight. And I was just like, oh, I didn't really bring that much upbeat music. I brought mostly, you know, all the slower
ballads.
stuff. Yeah. So, but it was still all good. I had a few in there. You know, I had Rick James. So I remember I did play Super Freak. I played, I had some Ohio Fire. What else did I put on? I forget what else I put on that day. But yeah.
How did you prepare for that? Like, how does somebody like you prepare? Like, how do you know what records to choose, how many records you're taking? Like, how do you prepare for that?
All right, so that first one, I probably didn't prepare enough, but and you know what's funny?
Okay, give advice to those that are listening that are like haven't went to spin yet.
I'm actually I'm one of the type that's more of an over prepare. So if I'm gonna do, you know, a 3-hour show, I'm probably preparing for 4 to 5 hours. I literally, you know, just thinking of one I recently did. It was 3 hours, and they said just play a mixture of music. And I was like, all right, so I'm gonna play a bunch of different genres, which I have a lot of different genres, and I actually like doing that. You know, that wasn't the original plan, but I was like, hey, if I have these other records, you know, and this is opportunity to go spin them, I will. I think I've kind of gotten to the point where I can start to put together some playlists in my head, and then I'll go pull the records out. And then I play them through. You know, sometimes they all sound good in that order. Sometimes I got to switch things up. And then I go through, make sure everything sounds good. You know, I'll clean whatever, you know, so got to add that, and got to keep the records clean, especially when you're taking them in public. And I think I just, you know, over prepare enough that when I get there, it's all right, let's throw them on and let's go. You know, it's so funny. So once I did, you know, I want to say, you know, yeah, probably more than a few years ago, before we really got into it, that's something that was different. When I would go around to functions, I would watch what they're doing. And I'm like, all right, now that I've done it once, and I was just like, all right, that's a lot more work, but let's see what, and everybody has their own style, you know. Some people like to move the mixer from left to right. Some people like to keep the volume up. Some people turn the volume up and down as they go, or you know, there's mute buttons on some mixers. It's just like, all right, so everybody has a different way of doing it. Even that first time we did it at Walnut Room with Casper, his mixer is way different than mine. I have a new Mark. It's a very basic one, and I don't know what he has, but there's a lot more buttons on it. So we were looking at that thing like, all right, I know it's gonna do the same thing as mine at home, but what does this button do, and what does this button do? So obviously the first thing you want to do is definitely get familiar with the mixer. But
Yeah.
like I said, I just over prepare. I know there a lot of people. I hear what a lot of people do. They just grab whatever records they're feeling like, take them down to places and spin them. Maybe I don't know if I'll ever get to that comfort. Just being my personality type, I don't think I'll ever be able to get to that point. But
so walk us through a day where like you're getting ready to go spin. How do you prepare for that? Like, so a day before, do you think of the music that you want to play for your set? Or are you like that day just like, hey, let me, how you say, over prepare these other records that I'm going to take? And then you get your box ready, you clean. What are you using to clean your records? I'm just thinking of somebody listening, like, like maybe they have their first event coming up, just to hear from somebody firsthand, like, this is how to be successful, to have a successful set, prepare like this.
Now, I'm sure everybody has their different, but I'll tell you, as soon as I know about something, I'll start thinking, all right, it's going to be this kind of atmosphere. So it's definitely nothing the day before, and I'm just going to take it back. That's just my personality. And, I know I just brought up a college story from 20 years ago, but I'll bring up another one. I was the type of person that when the semester hit and the professor was like, hey, here's a syllabus, you have a 10-page paper due at the end of the semester. I'm the type that's going to write a page for the next 10 weeks. And then I'll have, plenty of time to reread it, make edits before I turn it in. And I still, like I said, must be my personality type, because I still do the same thing. So I'll start with this, depending on how long they want me to play. I'll do half an hour, one day, half an hour the next day, and just really make sure, all right, that part's good, that part's good, that part's good, and just make sure, the in-betweens, that they transition well. And so I have to clean them. So like I said, I'll start preparing right away. I don't wait till the last day. I just can't do that. I'm not one of those people that can wait till the last moment. I would probably go crazy. So I start preparing right away, and especially you don't know how many you have to clean. I do try to keep mine as clean as possible, but it just never works. You just always got to go back. So I bought this, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. It's called like Record Doctor or something. And it's just basically a machine, put the record on there. And there's different solutions. You can just go on Amazon and see which ones work. I do have a little kit where you get a brush and things. So basically, there's a couple kinds with the brush. There's some kinds you can spray on the brush and then wipe that way, or there's kind you just put right on the record and you take the brush, just depending on how they dispense the liquid. There's good ones for both of them. From my understanding, I do have a bottle of it. It's called TM-8. It's supposed to be the best stuff. If you look out there, I don't know if it still is. I bought it a couple years ago. It's supposed to be the best stuff. So on the more expensive records, I'll use that. I'm not using it on cheap records, but on the more expensive ones, I'll use that. If not, I just have some plain average one that, anyway, so yeah, just do that. And then you flip it over and it's like a vacuum. So then the vacuum basically takes any excess solution you put on there, any dirt, anything, just takes it off of there. And obviously you're supposed to do it enough so that it's perfectly dry. Then you can throw it on the record player and it should play nice and smooth. Another thing I know you keep wanting to go through the whole process, and something I noticed too, when I go around and look at everything, they probably don't know, if anybody's listening, any record, people in Sacramento are listening, like, oh, is he studying me? And I didn't even know it. I thought he just wanted to record and post something real quick. One thing I noticed is, I'd never see people play with the volume and the anti-skating. And that makes such a big difference on how the record sounds. Like, if you have your anti-skating off, like, it can cause so many, it makes it, you can still play the record, but it doesn't sound right, or it doesn't sound perfect. So that's something I do too. So when I'm packing up, obviously we just pack everything up, take it down there. First thing I always do when I get there is I have an anti-skating plate. And I do that. I check my volume. I check my anti-skating to make sure everything's good. And then, because at least then I know like the records are going to sound as good as possible, because you have your anti-skating off, it won't sound good. Sometimes it even causes skipping,
Yeah.
And, sometimes you hear people skipping and I'm like, oh, I bet they didn't check their anti-skating and don't have that, at the correct, which is not really, and I'm not sure what other people do, but with the anti-skating plate, it's really not hard to do. And honestly, my record player I have in the living room, I'm always having to adjust that for some reason. I think it might be time for me to get a new record player for the living room. That one has quite a bit of miles on it. I think it might might be time for the upgrade at this point, because I'm always having to adjust it at this point. But
For somebody that doesn't know that's listening, can you explain what that is?
oh boy. All right. So if you look on the tone arm, right, you have your volume. And, depending who you talk to, that can make a world of difference in the sound too, right? But I try to have mine to the point where, so my understanding, and it hasn't happened to me, but if you look it up, I believe if you go on the volume, if you go over 3.5, it's not going to do it the first time. But if you're, continuously over that, I guess it can ruin records. And that's why what they say, talking about new people, right? If you're checking for record players, I know some of these cheap ones, they have it, going up to 6 or 7. And I'm like, well, this is ruining the record, right? From what I understand, I've never gotten one of those kind of record players, but, if you're new, not saying to go out and get the most expensive one, but at least get something decent, right? That's not going to hurt the records and is going to sound good. So I typically, what I try to do, and, I have different ones that I take in public, and those ones have completely different weights. And I'm putting those at like 1. And I'm like, I was like, why is it so much less on this one? But I don't know, maybe they're better in that way. I don't know. But what I like to do is just, I don't want it on there too hard, because I also say that too, like you don't want too much weight, but I want to be on there just nice. I don't want it so light where it can skip, because if you have it too light, it's just, and it's trying to go through, it could easily go off. So try to get it somewhere where it just, sits nice there. And then with the anti-skating, basically, and other people will give you different, right? Because I don't like using, saying we spin records. I'm not really a DJ. I don't, it's not art what I'm doing. I play music. But like DJs that do scratching, obviously they want their anti-skating. I forget how it is, but they want it a certain way. But if you're just trying to play a record, you just want it so your needle sits there nice and neat in the groove. Whereas if you have your anti-skating off, it's liable to go, it's going to go one way or another. The needle's going to go a different way. And so that's what, sometimes you get the skipping or whatnot. And so that's, like I said, that's always the first thing I check. And even when I do, post a record or something, I'm like, oh, that didn't sound right. Let me go get this. And it's the same record, and it just seems like, I don't know if it's like, a high tide, low tide type of thing, depending on the time of the year. It wants more weight, or the anti-skating wants to go this way. Couldn't tell you the science behind that, but you just want to make sure that or at least what we do, we want the needle to sit there nice in the groove.
Yeah, for sure. So not only have you been spinning, but now I also heard that you're doing stuff with Casper, which Casper is a very, very good friend of ours, a very good friend. I love him. I call him, I don't know how many times throughout the week. I need help. I need advice. I need.
And not to give people a sneak peek, but I believe he's going to be on your show pretty soon, right?
He is. He is my upcoming guest, so he'll be on next Sunday. But I can't thank him enough if he's watching this, which I know he does, because he has been a big mentor in my life, and just a big encouragement, So we have those private encouragers that will, hey, Crystal, this or that. And sometimes he'll correct me and be like, well, this, I think you should, change this up or whatnot. But like I always tell him, his feedback means the world to me. And everything he tells me, I'll just say, okay, I'll take it, whatever it is, good or bad, I'm going to take it, which has always been good. No me regaña mucho. But
he's probably nicer to you. No, I'm playing. But you hit the nail on the head. He's one of the most genuine people out there. Yeah. And I was, in that day when we started talking a little bit over at that taqueria for that Solistic show, it just happened by chance, really, I think. And, it was definitely a blessing. At the time, I knew who he was, I knew the group. I didn't realize, like, hey, now I have access to probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the Sacramento area, and his collection's out of control. Like he knows his stuff, and he's the type of person where if he doesn't, a lot of times he'll get back to you right away, but if not, he'll get back to you sooner than later. And he probably will tell you, normally give you a pretty good answer on what you need to do and whatnot. So definitely been a blessing. So yeah, that all. I know you're trying to get into the Capital City Records thing, right? Is that where we were transitioning to?
That's exactly where we're going.
All right. But yeah, started, like I said, I had seen him at shows before that. That was just, kind of first time we started talking. And then, he invited us to come out. And then after that, he invites us on the radio show, which, just to give you an example of how, he's even helped me grow, just even, like I said, even doing this. He had us on the radio show, and I was sitting here like, we were driving down, and I was just like, man, I don't really want to be talking on the radio. I was just like, let's just spin records and keep the talking to a minimum. And he's over here like, so, kind of the same stuff. Tell me about when you started getting into records. And I'm like, I don't really have a specific moment. And I was sitting here, I was thinking the other day, I was like, I should go back and listen to that, make sure I'm consistent with what I say on this show versus what I said on his show. But like it got me out of my comfort zone definitely a little bit there too, and growth and whatnot. And just along the way, like you said, encouraging. He's just a really genuine guy, and I feel like after little by little, we've really built a lot of mutual love, respect, trust type of thing, to the point where he asked me, if you probably know, he was already hustling records and whatnot. And one day I get a call from him. He's like, hey, you want to go in on some records with me and we'll hustle them off? He goes, we'll hit them up. We'll see what their wholesale prices are, what their requirements are, and this and that. I had never even thought of doing something like that. Never even crossed my mind that people are, basically he was his own little store, but he had his online store, the Bandcamp one, which we're using now for Capital City Records Bandcamp. Got to shout that. Got to include that too. So anyways, I was just like, all right, I'll do it. Not really knowing what I was getting myself into, but I was just like, oh, he's just like, hey, so we're gonna get them for this price, and then we'll hustle them off. And I was just like, all right. I just like I said, you got to have a lot of mutual, respect and trust and whatnot to have a little hustle and ask somebody to come in. And like I said, we just, we're rocking with it. And, we just started talking more and more and more and whatnot. And then him and Capital City Records was him. Capital City Records was him and another guy, Mike, who actually doesn't live too far from me. But I guess he, for one reason or another, he bowed out. Always welcome back. But, so Casper had been doing it, Capital City Records, by himself. I'm not sure exactly how long, because I'm not really sure when dude stepped out. But, I guess just the relationship we built, he called me one day. He was like, how would you feel about joining? And we'll be like, we'll go co on everything. I was just like, man, I was walking around with a smile for the rest of the day. I was like, I never thought I'd be part of a record label or anything, and that was actually just over the summer. So why, I know you had Sam on. Shout out to Sam. Sam's a super cool guy too. And, I've definitely got to know him a lot more over the year. So anyway, so the next record that comes out, I should be like, co-executive producer on it. Y was already in the works. So, my name's not on that one, but, the next one and going forward, my name should be on all those records too. So that's exciting. And, just seeing a lot of behind the scenes. I've definitely, I didn't know about the business. I'm a collector. I'm one of those people too. Like, when we did that, when we started buying records and hustling them off, I was like, all right, I can do that because I bought them for a purpose. But these people that buy records and sell them, I was like, I can't do it because I buy them and I don't want to get rid of them. I just want to keep building up my collection. But so that was definitely new to me. And I actually, another one of your guests was the first time I did it by myself. I did Cafe Canela as soon as I heard If I Fall. And I know when they were on, they said Stuck in Love was their favorite one. But I was just like, it was If I Fall for me. Anyways.
Me too.
Was it?
Me too.
Yeah. Anyways, so I hit them up. And I was just like, hey, are you going to be, as soon, like before the pre-sale, I think happened. I think I was one of the first ones to buy them too. Because I was just like, hey, what are your wholesale requirements? So I got them and hustled them off. So that was the first time I even did it by myself. And I was just like, oh, some of this stuff is different. You got to set up a PayPal. You got to set up an online thing. And I was trying to do it. It didn't work out for me so much at the time. But this was before Capital City Records. So going forward, that's where the effort's going to be. But so then I started doing it by myself. And then at the time, when I got asked, I was like, oh, well, I'll just buy some Y wholesale. So I did get them. So I hustled them off wholesale too. But going forward with Capital City Records, it'll be me and him. And
Wow.
don't know exactly, the plans for 2025 yet, but I'm sure there'll be something good in the works. And, you'll be one of the first to know, I'm sure.
I think it's so important to continue to cultivate that essence of helpfulness within our community, because for me, and I've said this in I think almost all my interviews, I don't want this music to die ever. When I'm gone, I want my son to come back and say, hey, these are my mom's records.
Yeah.
And to continue, for this music to continue to live on. You know what I mean? And it really does scare me. I think about like, what's gonna happen when we're gone? Like, is this music gonna continue? Is the next generation gonna embrace it the way we did? Like, are they gonna, it's scary.
Yeah.
So and for me, it's like, here, like push it out, like continue to do these events and do these
for
interviews,
sure. Well, and who would ever thought? I mean, how long ago was it? Probably like 10 years ago, maybe a little over 10. Soldi started. Nobody probably knew what was going on there, but I remember hearing Myron and E and Jack Moo's Joyride, and I'm like, oh boy, like it has that 70s feel, but it's brand new music. Now look at how big it is, which I'm sure it'll die down and come back. Music always goes in cycles and whatnot, but I think the soul music will always be there, right? I mean, hopefully, but it might die down at some point.
What do you think about the Sodi scene? Like all this music, new music coming out, like Café Canela, like sold out within the same, I think, week, right? They sold out.
I believe they had almost sold out during pre-orders. So I think they had a couple left. So they pretty much sold out during pre-orders, from my understanding. They pretty much sold out during pre-orders, and then I think they had a couple left and sold them out, within the first week or whatever little left they had.
So how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this Sodi scene? Like all these.
I love it. I almost feel like it's the only new music really coming out that's really good. And 2024 has been a big year. Obviously, I'm going to be biased with Why, which, that's gotten a lot of good feedback. But, you said Cafe Canela. I mean, the Heart Tones came out this year. When Los Yesterday's album came out this year. Johnny Burgos, who you had on here.
Finnegan.
Oh, yep, him too, which you had him on last week.
Yeah.
But, I still listen to that Johnny Burgos on a regular basis, and it's just like, there's been so much good soldies come out this year. And I think it's been building up to it. But then if you look at other genres, I hate to say it, but any other genre just not doing it. From rap, country, maybe they have a couple okay albums come out this year. Hate to say it too, Mexican music kind of fell off for, like a good 10 years now too. And I loved Mexican music too, but I can't do their new stuff either. Really, the Soldies is really the only place it's been at this year for new music coming out.
For sure. What is the biggest like event that you've done that you feel has been like the biggest, like the highlight of your vinyl spinning career, let's say?
Highlight?
Or your most memorable that you can say, like.
Well, I'll throw a few of them out there. Obviously, the first time always is special. When we did Walnut, the first time as a group, the first time we did Arvida, which is our first show, was big. Another person I got to bring up, and we'll talk about him a little bit too, Eddie at Album Revolution. So he basically, I forget what year he moved up here. He's originally from Southern California. He moved up here, and he throws a huge record fair. I think it started out like twice a year. Now he does 4 a year, one every season. And we've done his show, and now we're pretty much every show. This year we've done his record fair every show, and it's one of my favorite shows to put together because he also has me go through all the different genres. It might have been my idea originally, I forget, but I try to think about, all right, you have a bunch of vendors and you have a bunch of buyers. So I'm like, all right, I got to play all these different genres because we have vendors of every genre. We got people looking for records of every genre. And Eddie is another one of those people I chalk up to one of the most genuine people out there. I can't say enough good things about him. It's like they say, you don't know what people say behind your back, right? You don't know if people are really genuine. You know what they say behind. I know what he says behind my back. And I know this because people call me or they'll text me or whatnot saying, hey, Album Revolution says you do a great job spinning records. Can you come out to our show? I was like, all right, he knows a whole bunch of people because he's just in the Sacramento area. He's really big on the vendor side of it. Not Casper does other things, but Eddie does what he does. He does it big. So, and I know I know one of your questions always is too. And I'll just because we're talking about him right now, one of your questions, what do you tell the new record collectors? I definitely tell them to go find these events like Album Revolution events. I'm pretty sure every town, every city has them, on different scales. Even here in Sacramento, there's vendors getting together every single weekend. And go to one of the big ones. It's overwhelming at first. Just because there's so many, you don't know who to go to, right? You got a million. Who knows how many vendors in there, right? And boxes and boxes of records. But a lot of times they label them. So if you're looking for soul, you just go find their soul records, and you'll start to build relationships with some of the vendors, and that's what I've done. Besides Eddie, there's a couple of people at his functions that I built relationships with. I know just to go to these guys, I know that they'll be honest with their records, they're honest with their prices, and that's such a big issue. I feel like right now with records is the pricing. They just gone up like crazy, but I know some of these vendors, they're like, all right, I'll give you a deal, because they know what they spent on them. And you can probably get better prices than you're going to get online. If you buy more than one, a lot of times they'll do better deals with you. So that's, we'll talk about more, new people stuff, I know, at the end, but definitely want to, talk about, Album Revolution, and he's done a lot with us. He's been a guest with us a couple times. He has us at his functions. We rock with him pretty hard, and I would definitely recommend whatever town you're in, just go find those little functions, and these people know what they're talking about too. So if you have questions, you can, probably ask them too, or whatnot. Probably doing his are always a lot of fun too. Like I said, there's not one. We'll see if we get to that point, but right now it's just having a lot of fun with it, and I couldn't say just one.
Yeah, there's so many. I'm sure every event that you're at is memorable in itself, right? Like it's unique, it's memorable, and definitely creating new memories.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And the thing is too, is like you never know who you're gonna meet at any of them, or who's gonna pop up, or or anything really.
Have you met any artists while you're out spinning?
I met various artists just along the way, because I definitely like to go get my record signed. Most recently I did get Jack Moves and Rudy Deonda, because we were out there, so I got that signed by them. And they're super cool people too. They they didn't even have like a green room, like they're just out there chilling. They had a little, I think it was a picnic table, but it was like a bench. Just what the venue had. That's where they were selling the records. They're out there, talking with everybody, just super down there. And I think that's kind of cool about a lot of these souldy singers right now too. Is like they're not so big where they're big headed that they'll sit here and talk with people. But just along the way, everyone I go to, I try to go sign my records, and everybody's been pretty cool. I've had everybody from earlier this year with Jason Joshua's Sex Tones, which Kelly Finnegan produced, and that is actually it doesn't get talked about enough, but that is a really good album, and I'm glad I got that and got to see them live. I've had Heart Tones sign my record this year. Oh boy, I know there's more. I'll probably think of it later, but that's where I'm at right now. But
the Jack Moves are actually one of my favorites. My favorite souldy bands.
Which one?
The Jack Moves.
Oh, the Jack, yeah, because what, I feel like when they came out with Joyride, it was just like, I love the video, but not even hearing the video, I love the song from the beginning. And I was just like, and it was, back then there was, I think it was just basically, Mayor Hawthorne really. There wasn't barely any soldies. That's really been big, probably what, these last 4 or 5 years maybe, where it's continued to grow, but they were one of the first ones doing it 10 or however long ago it was. I went and actually, I have 2 original presses of that. And so I did get them to sign one, which I was just like, I don't know how I never got to see them, because they've been out here a couple times. I think things just didn't work out. But Outpatient Records out in Chico, super cool guy. Mateo, super cool guy. He organized all that and whatnot. So I was just like, all right, I got to go out there and support him. And Jack Moves are going to be there, and Rudy Deonda. I was just like, all right, we got to go out to that one. And Casper was spinning at it. It was just meant to be. I had to go to that one. And
We
got
actually got to have dinner with the Jack Moves when Casper had them at the radio station. And we went to go have pizza in Davis. What's that pizza joint called?
I'm not as familiar with Davis.
Okay, well, there's a pizza joint in Davis, so we got to go have pizza. But being around them, they're so down to earth. I mean, I felt like they're tia. Like, I felt like they're just wild kids. Like, like just having a good time.
Waiting for you in studio too, or something, right?
Story behind the Jack Moves and why I hold them so close to me, it's because the day that I got married and we had to choose what song was going to be our first wedding dance, I had to have that song that they sang, and it's "I'll Always Love You" by Fred. I forget the last name all the time. I'll put it in the description, but they covered that song, and I don't know, when I heard it, it just like the lyrics, everything, and I needed that song. I said that's gonna be the song. It was it was live. The performance was live and it was on YouTube. I actually had the DJ play that live performance from YouTube because it wasn't, they didn't even record it. It was just a cover at one of their concerts. And I had to have it, and Casper actually was the one that told them, "Hey, do you know that the first wedding dance was one of your guys' cover songs?" And they're like, "What? What? No way!" And then when I told them what song it was, they're like, "Crystal, why that one? Like, we just sang it that one time. Like, we're trying it out. Why?" I was like, "I don't know, it's so special. Like, I just love it." And I remember when they were practicing, as soon as I heard the strings, and I'm like, they're gonna play it. But it had been so long since they played it, they couldn't do it. But just them trying to for us, it was just like, oh, they're the best.
Yeah, and it's even crazy when you see him live because his voice, he has a really nice voice when you hear it on the record. He sounds like that live, So I was just like, oh wow, he really sounds like how he sees him. Yeah. And so I was definitely impressed when I saw him. I was just like, oh, nice. Because you see so many of them, they sound so different, or the microphone's off, so you don't get or one thing or another. But he was sounding good. Just like when he did Joyride, he was hitting the same exact notes. I was just like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love them. They're definitely super humble, super amazing artists. I want to have them on here. I reached out to them. I'm like, hello, did you guys forget me? So
I think they were just in your area too, so that would have been.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we'll definitely have them on soon. I'm speaking that by faith. But man, so it's definitely been a journey for you. That's super exciting how much you've grown and evolved. What do you have planned for 2025? Anything that you want to share about? Anything?
No 2025 plans right now. Just got a few more functions. Sam, I'll bring this up real quick. Sam, I know they did, or Legal Brass. I should say that because I call him Sam, but I know it's the band Legal Brass. They're doing 2 record releases for Y. They did their one in SoCal. The one in NorCal is going to be November 16th. I'll be spinning for like a half an hour or so at that one. But that's just going to be a cool function. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. Album Revolution, they have their winter record fair December 15th. I should have wrote all this down. December 15th. So I'll be spinning at that one, and that'll be a bunch of different genres, and that'll be a really good one too. Like I said, I always enjoy those ones. And then Casper is gonna have his Christmas show on his radio station, which you've been down there. So the plan is to do the Christmas show. I did it last year, and that's actually something I've been doing this year because of the show last year. I love Christmas music. Did I have a huge Christmas collection of records when I went down there? No, I didn't. But I was just like, all right, I got to start building this up. So this whole year I've been listening to Christmas music. And like every month, I've been buying like 2 Christmas albums every month. So now when I go down there, I was like, all right, now I got a whole bunch of Christmas music to play.
I'm ready now.
Yeah, I'm ready. So that's going to be an exciting one. I'll probably play Christmas music at Album Revolution's winter record fair too. Really, that's the only thing on the schedule, music-wise, for for now. I don't have anything lined up. I'll probably try and reach out to Arvida. You know, I'm hopefully, you know, it was a very win-win situation. You know, obviously we brought people in, we had a good time. So I'll probably, you know, do some Sunday oldies. I just got to touch base with him and see where they're at. But he's a super cool guy, and you know, everything too. Yeah. So that's the plan.
I'll actually be up there. I'm missing your guys' event by a week because I think I'll be down there like the week of the 20th.
All right.
I'll be out there for like a week and a half, so we'll definitely have to meet up and hang out.
Yeah, definitely. Are you gonna do Casper's live, like you guys two together? Or are you gonna do that one?
No. Well, the podcast, no, we'll be doing it on Zoom. But I definitely want to meet up with him out there in Sacramento and see what we get into over there.
Nice.
I definitely reach out to you, but that's so dope. Well, that's exciting. That you're gonna be doing the Christmas show. I didn't even know that there was a lot of music like that, like Christmas soul music out there like that until recently. I came across it. I'm like, what the heck? Like, I've been missing out this whole time, and I'm on Christmas, like not knowing what to play. Now I know.
And even Kelly Finnegan, who you had on last week, he has a Christmas album. So I had to go Joyful Sounds. So I had to go get that one. Casper already had it. He was the one that actually told me about that one. So I was like, all right, I got to go buy that one. And like I said, I just been doing it. That's been my theme of this year. You know, it's like you never stop collecting. It's just like, all right.
Of course.
A lot of these genres, I'm, you know, probably within the next year. I mean, I think I'm getting there with freestyle music. I've been going back and getting some like alternative stuff. There's really not that many albums I want. I got some of it, you know. I like my West Coast rap or just rap in general, but I think I'm getting there probably in the next year. I'm not going to really have much to buy there either. Oldies are going to be forever, right? Especially with the soldies. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more coming out next year. You know, some of it, maybe one or two with my name on it, but just in general, you know, there's between all the record labels and the artists, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good stuff. This was a good year. And I'm sure next year will be a good year too. And yeah, you know, I kind of like, how do you feel about that term soldie?
Soldie? I like it. I don't think there's a problem with it. I mean, it's the soul and it's, you know, I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
I like it too. You know, they're not oldies, but I you know, I see where they got it from. It's modern soul music, you know,
exactly.
And a couple of things, something's coming to my head too. You know, just, you know, we're having this conversation and things start popping in.
Tell us.
You know, you're asking about soldies, and you know, we talked about how, you know, back in the day, you know, there's a lot more. We say oldies, but really we mean soul, right? But I guess sometimes, you know, it was soul and funk, and then rap, and then I feel like now, you know, I definitely listen to a lot more soul, a lot less rap, you know. But I like that term because, you know, I'm definitely one that believes like, hey, if your soul is sick, right, then your body and your mind's not gonna feel as well either. You gotta, if you poison your soul, it's all bad. But you know, the soul music nourishes the soul. So I like how they, you know, they call it soul music. And I think people don't talk about that as much, but you know, and people don't think about, oh, you gotta nourish your soul. You can't just you know, poison it. And it's way too easy to poison it these days, you know. But you know, the one place you can find music is soldies, with music that actually nourishes your soul. And just to ramble a little bit, but I mean that goes across the board. I mean, it's not just music. If you're you know, depending on what kind of movies, people you're hanging around, right? You hang around certain people that people either nourish or they poison your soul, right? Or even books, you know, same difference. You can't see, I got my big old book collection right there. So I've been told I'm a bookworm once or twice too. You know, I'm just gonna throw it out there too. Couple book recommendations, and not music related, so we'll see how this goes. But anybody that knows me will say I have a stubborn and uncompromising faith. So if I got to recommend books, I have to recommend the Bible first. But after that, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and Get Rich with Dividends by Mark Leichenfeld. Really, that 7 Habits, you know, there's a million self-help books out there, and I've read a few of them, but that's not really a self-help book. It's really a blueprint. You have to do the work, but it really can make you the best version of yourself. And you know, that's important in life. And a lot of people they might want to be the best version of their life, but they don't know how to get there. And I feel like that book really lays it out. And then Get Rich with Dividends. We all want to live comfortably, right? And if you're the type of person that just wants to spend your money on beer and weed, book's probably not for you. But you're the type of person like, hey, let's think about the future. How do I, create more financial security, especially in the future? And there's a lot of ways to do it, right? Some people invest in real estate. People, spend their money in different ways. But I felt that book, me personally, if I got a few extra bucks, when I try to do a little every month, do some investing every month. And I kind of follow a lot of principles in that book. And there's a lot of different ways to invest. I just felt I've read everything, read all the stock books pretty much on dividend that Amazon has. And that one just really lays it out for you. So I know that's not music related, but I just had to throw that stuff
Wait,
out.
so not only are you a vinyl collector, vinyl spinner, but you're a book reader and
I'm a book reader.
Soaker.
What?
A knowledge soaker. Like you soak in knowledge.
And try to be, you gotta never stop learning, right?
That's dope. I like that. You know what? I like that because I'm the same exact way. You know that? Like for me, people tell me, Crystal, you're crazy. Like for reals, there's something wrong with you because no, for real. Look, to me, if I could sit down and watch TV and watch a movie, for me, that's a luxury. That means that for me, I've already crossed off everything on my checklist. I've already taken care of everything I need to take care of. Now I can sit back, kick my feet up, and I ain't got nothing else to do. But as long as there's something like because to me it's like that hour that I'm watching, to me like wasting of that hour that I'm wasting to me it's wasting time. Like honestly, like. But I could be using that to either like self-help or like, internalize some new knowledge or learn something new. I'd rather feed myself with that. And when you're talking about watch what you're listening to, watch what you're hearing, watch what you're intaking. And going back to what you were saying, like souldies, how it nourishes your soul, but that's so important for you to continue to nourish your life, because if you're not depositing into your life, you're going to create chaos. Because what are you going based off of? What you haven't. Look, I'm gonna read you a quote. While you were talking, I remember that I like Eastern philosophy a lot. You'll see me studying a lot of that. But last night, I was reading this quote, and it says, "Watch your thoughts; they become your words. Watch your words because they become your actions. Watch your actions because they become your habits. Watch your habits; they become your character." Yep. And then watch your character because that's what becomes your destiny. So I feel like what we deposit into our life is everything. Make sure that what you're listening to is depositing something good into your life. Make sure that it's gonna make you grow. Make sure that it's gonna get you out of whatever negativity is in your mind and clouding up your mind, because it's so important. So to me, I'd rather be listening to audiobooks, reading something, or
exactly
on that one.
I mean, if you even, just to keep going, a couple examples I can think of. I mean, when you listen to negative music, right? Puts you in a different mood. When they're talking about you say you can't listen to it in the morning, but I mean, just in general, I mean, I go back and listen to the classics, but a lot of the, negative music, can't do it. Movies where, so many movies, they're just treating each other poorly, and then all of a sudden you build tolerance to it. But I mean, think like if you watch like a horror movie, for example, really that's poisoning your soul, and you don't even realize it, but you get done watching it, like your body feels a little bit weaker, your mind's not thinking clearly, because you just watched all this craziness. But then, for example, you go to church, right? As long as you're going to church for the right reasons, really you're nourishing your soul. But when you're walking out of there, your body feels good, your mind feels clear, So it all kind of works together. And like, to build on it, I guess, all that ultimately becomes your character, your destiny. That's why, you gotta be I I described it nicely earlier, right? What did I say? I was stubborn and uncompromising with my faith. You know, you gotta be that way. Gotta protect your soul. And
no, you know why I understand that? Because one of the things that I asked somebody a question one time. I said, why? I was, nephews, like my, nieces and nephews, especially now, this generation, they don't know how to some don't know how to reverence their parents like we used to, right? Like our mom and dad would say, go do that. You go and do that.
Oh, yeah,
that
for sure.
Type of thing. So I'm very old school, right? So I'm like, why do you talk to your mom like that? And then somebody made a comment to me, it's like, look at the music that they're listening to. What are they learning through that music? They're not learning that you respect a woman, that you give a woman her place. They're not learning. What are they hearing? F this and F that, and she's just a this, and she's just, that's the what they're feeding themselves with. That there's no respect for women, versus us that we grew up listening to oldies. What are you listening to? Man, I love this girl. I'm so heartbroken over this girl. She's my life. She's my world. Let me give her a standing ovation. I'm going to wait for her till God knows when. Like, that's all you're listening to, right? So the difference between doesn't even compare,
Yep. And I feel like as we mature, that's, we've definitely guided ourselves to that direction too, because it feels better to, just in general. So, but yeah, it's crazy. The next generation, there's a lot of hope for them. There's also, some nervousness about them too, right? So, but
but I say that for the parents. I say that like just be careful, just keep that in mind, that we are responsible for our kids. We're responsible for our kids, what we allow them to listen to, what we allow them to engage in. I'm very careful on what I allow my son to listen to in my presence, because I'm mindful of that. I don't want, him hearing that it's okay to disrespect the female, because my son's going to get married one day. I don't want him to think it's okay to talk to his wife or myself a certain kind of way, because he's listening to somebody tell him it's okay. So
also, it's just going to probably make a world of difference too, being in a household with parents that, are caring like that too, so.
Yeah, we could go on and on about this topic. We're going to have another podcast talking about our opinions and stuff like that.
Right.
But I don't know. Do you have anything else to share? I think it's been a great interview. I've had such a good time with you, and getting to know you. Anything else that you want to share?
All right, so I guess a couple other things that are coming ahead, because I know we always want to talk about the new collectors, right? I know originally when we scheduled this, it was because I had tagged you on the Vinyl Me Please Discord. And, I still recommend that. So I know we talked about like 3 different kind of collectors earlier. That's definitely geared towards audiophiles. But these people, they do their research, and just a wealth of knowledge. And everybody on there's super knowledgeable. Well, maybe not knowledgeable because I'm on it, but anybody can be on it. But the people that will respond to are knowledgeable, respectful. So I like going on. I just read it. I don't even post that much on it. I'll just read what people are saying. And it's nice because there's even a chat on there that you can go like, hey, there's a discount code and stuff like that. And it's just like, all right, let me go. I'm gonna use my budget this month because there's a discount code at this place, and they've already used them, so they know they're all legit. So that's nice. I definitely recommend people, and that way if you're at home and you have a question and you don't really have somebody to go to, you can just go on there. If you're asking about Rare Soul, that's not going to be the place for it, but definitely a lot of good people on there. A couple, I want to go back to record fairs. Like in our area, Album Revolution does the big one. But there's different ones for new people. I mean, you can go out there and just dig a little bit, see what you like. You're probably going to get better prices from these kind of people as opposed to going on Discogs. And don't get me wrong, I love Discogs. There's a lot you can learn on Discogs too. I've learned my lesson on certain things, and not to get in the whole, first press versus, represses, but you can go on there and people have already told you like, hey, this pressing sucks. Don't buy this.
Yeah.
And with my oldies, I pretty much always do original presses, and that's a whole nother, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now, but You know, I know some people are super hardcore about it. I was always hardcore about it up until recently. With a lot of my 90s stuff, I will get represses. 90s and later, I will get represses. But you have to be careful, you know, because 10 years ago, they were repressing everything and doing a terrible job at it. So you really have to look at the different pressings. But just to give you an example, one of the best rap albums, Bone Thugs and Harmony, East 99 Eternal, I have the original press that came out in, 95 or whatever. I have the original press, spent all this money on it. Didn't read what on Discogs people were saying about that pressing, and it sounds terrible, you know? And I was just like, well, I have the original press, but it sounds terrible. And a lot of the 90s stuff, you know, you want the repress because just how they did things back then. They kind of went backwards with records. I don't know if you've noticed that. You know, the 70s sounded great, 80s sounded pretty good, and then in 90s, because I think a lot of it, they made albums so long and they try to squeeze them onto the records. So that was a big part of it, so they don't sound good. But you can go on there, you know, you're going to find out, you know, market rate of what records are. You can find out what people say about them, because, you know, most records on there have somebody that says, hey, this sucks, or this sounds good, or whatnot. A couple other little tricks I do buy off of Amazon. I don't know, some of your listeners might judge me for that, but what I do a couple times a month, I'll go on there, and it's mostly like my 90s stuff, you know, building up that part of the collection a little bit more, 90s, 2000s. And a lot of that stuff was never even pressed. It's barely getting pressed for the first time. But I'll just go on vinyl. You click vinyl, you can filter, right? And I'll click for pre-orders. And I'll just go for all the vinyl pre-orders. I'll just spend a couple hours, go through it, and just pre-order all the, you know, you're going to go through a lot to find 2 or 3 records you want. But now, you know, if it wasn't for doing that, there's a lot of records I probably would have never got, because what I want, I'm sure a lot of other people want too, because if it was big in the 90s, there's a lot of us out there. You know, they're buying them up. So a lot of them you can't even go back and buy, or, you know, they'll sell them for another price. And that's the same thing, you know, some of these different record labels, check out their website. Their websites, you know, they're putting out, you know, different releases. Universal does a lot of it. They have like a website for every one of their genres. They have Música Latina, which I just ordered a bunch off of there a couple months ago. You know, they went back and repressed like a lot of reggaeton stuff. So I was like, hey, this has never been pressed before. And I was like, well, I got to buy it right away, because I know those reggaeton ones a lot of times they don't last. But they have a country one. They have one that's hip hop and R&B. You know, they're going back and either repressing or pressing for the first time. And there's only place. They don't put them on Amazon. They don't put them nowhere else. So you have to go on to some of these record labels. Another one that I just did, I blew my budget this month on Fonovisa. And a lot of the Mexican music from back in the day never got pressed. Just came out on CDs or whatnot, maybe tapes. They're going back and pressing a lot of it. So I got like Conjunto Primavera. I got, what's some of the other ones? Los Angeles Azules and just stuff like that. I was just like, otherwise, and that stuff's hard to find too. So, you know, sometimes you got to do that. And I guess how I got, real quick, I'm going to give somebody a shout out for this too. Alex, who's a member, he's like not even 30 yet. You can learn from anybody, right? That's what I've really learned in life. You can learn from anybody. I always thought I would be, you know, our relationship probably more me teaching him than him teaching me. But, and he's definitely more into the modern rap, and he knows what's going on. We do have an artist we both like, Larry June. So he hits me up one week, and he was just like, hey, Larry June pre-order starts Friday at noon. And this was before Larry June got that big. Now when he puts out albums, he puts out a bunch, everybody can get them. And so I was like, oh, whatever, you know, I'll pre-order it whenever I get to it, no big deal, because a lot of these other ones, I'm just used to pre-ordering ahead of time, and his sold out within 15 minutes. And so if he didn't tell me that, I would have never got that record. And then on top of that, the next week he was sending me screenshots. I don't know if it was eBay or Discogs. People were selling it for $200 already, and they haven't even got the record yet, but they were posting it that, hey, I got a pre-order, you can buy it from me for $200. So just, you never know where you're going to learn stuff from. And I was like, how does he even know about this stuff? But he actually would go, I guess what he would do is certain, you know, websites that you just can't find any, and you're only going to find those records off of certain websites. So, I mean, it's a different time. When I started collecting, you know, we just went down to record stores, or I had Discogs. I think was Discogs and record stores is pretty much all that was there. But now it's just like, you know, there's a lot of different sources and a lot of different people out there that, you know, you might get a bad apple. Don't judge the whole community by them.
I think definitely that's so dope, because it's like, don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
You know, by you saying that, I hope somebody listening that is either interested in collecting or buying records, don't limit yourself from if you see something on Amazon, if you see something on eBay, Discogs, and how he was saying, Thomas was saying, like even these vinyl record fairs, go out there and look. Don't limit yourself, and definitely connect. How you said, like you can learn from anybody. You could even learn from somebody that's just starting out like you. Like
Yeah.
you never know.
Well, you figure people 10 years younger, they have a way different approach to things.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it's like just like people 10 years older than me have a different approach as well. So it's just like I'm gonna learn both ways.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I remember we'll end it on this one, or unless you have anything else to say. But just popped in. All this stuff keeps popping in mind as we go, right? I want to say I was like in my mid-20s, and I never really drank wine all that much, and I didn't know nothing about it. But I know people are snobby about wine, right? You got some beer snobs now because they make all the microbrews and whatnot. But I just drank regular beer, or maybe tequila or whiskey a little bit. So I asked my boss, and to this day, he's still a mentor, even though we don't work together. I was just like, hey, I'm going to be going wine tasting. Like, how do I even know what wine to ask for? I was just like, man, I didn't know what to think. I know how to go order a beer. But he goes, you know what? He goes, you drink what you like.
Yeah.
And you know what? That stuck with me, even though it was about wine, but it's kind of stuck with me, over these last 15 years or so, because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I like. I got, some old schools. I'm doing to them what I like to do to them. My records, I'm doing what I like, and I would, really encourage anybody that's just starting to do what you like. Actually, I would say this to new people too: buy the cheap records first, because there's a lot of price, there's a lot of things going on. You don't want to get a bad record you spent a lot of money on and be discouraged. So, I was fortunate because when I started, they were mostly all cheap anyways. But I would say start out with the cheap records, but definitely, do what you like.
Do what you like. I agree. Like, I always tell everybody the same exact thing. Like, when they ask me, I'm like, start collecting for yourself what you like to listen to. Don't worry about what you need to get for everybody else. What is everybody else like listening to? It doesn't matter. Yep. What matters is what you like, what's in your box, what you're collecting. Collect for yourself first, and then, worry about everybody else. And talking about that, what do you have in your box right now? Like, what are you taking with you when you go spin? Like, what do you got in your box right now?
You know what? Every show is different. I have my, cubbies or whatever you want to call them, full of records. And I try to keep everything in there, try to keep it organized as best as possible. It really depends on every show. Probably this week I'll start working on that one. And I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I've been leaning between doing Latin music, which I haven't really spun music in Spanish too much, but I'm leaning either between that or doing like funk. It's a Saturday night. And so, Andre Cruz and Chris Lujan are going to be there too. So it's going to be Peligro Brass, which is going to be more Latin. And then Andre Cruz and Chris Lujan, which I haven't met them. So I'm going to meet them for the first time in a couple of weeks. They're more soul. And so I'm like, what way do I want to do this? And it's a Saturday night. It's just like, I don't know. I'm leaning a little bit. I was leaning towards, music in Spanish, but now I'm leaning like the upbeat music in Spanish, everything from, merengue, reggaeton, cumbia, stuff like that. Now somebody else is doing cumbia, so I think I'm going to do funk. And we'll see what I bust out. But I haven't worked on that one yet. I try to keep it different, whatever I feel like. But I'll definitely, I got a half an hour, so that means it's probably going to take me an hour of prepping.
That's so dope. Well, Thomas, I want to thank you so much for an amazing interview and allowing us to get to know you personally and sharing an insight look on what your journey has been like as a vinyl collector, vinyl spinner, and everything that you have going on right now. So thank you so much. Any last words before we go?
Thanks for having me. And thanks for doing what you do too. I mean, I think this podcast probably been long overdue. Having one for, the soul and vinyl community. I mean, you got, collectors from all over, and also you have all these artists coming on too, which, all good artists too. Like all of them are, top solely artists at a minimum, if not just top 24 artists. So definitely appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, guys, that does conclude episode number 20 with none other than Thomas Sanchez from the Loyalty Record Club. And we will definitely see you on the next one.